I'm 77. And then,
Yeah, so that whole time.
yes. I actually was born at the Stinson Hospital in Bangor. A lot of people wouldn't even know where that is. And that was a local hospital up on Hammond Street. And then, of course, I resided here with my family.
Right.
My mother was adopted by a family out of Monroe. Their names were Staples. And from that, Chalmers was my grandfather. And he had a sister, Nellie Kenny, that lived on what I call Hubbard Hill here in Winterport. And he had another sister, which was Manzi, that lived on Sampson Street down there by the sewer district they're building over. The Staples family was a big family, yes. And they adopted 4 or 5 children, and my mother was one of them. I grew up on Water Street, and I actually was going to bring a painting of it down that Harriet Hill did of the neighborhood. It didn't have numbers back then, but it was right across from what I call the Winterport Ferry Terminal. Well, I went to school. I started the 1st grade with Laura Caudle, and that school was on School Street here in Winterport, which the building is still there, and progressed on up to what I call high school, and that's when the Smith School opened up. Winterport had a high school right above the post office here on the main road, but I never went to that. In the meantime, they had built the new one, which is the Leroy H. Smith School, and that's where I went on to high school. And from that, I went to Hamden Academy. If you went to high school in Winterport, and there was classes that you wanted to take and they did not offer, and for myself, it was driver's ed. They offered driver's ed in Hamden, and back then I had my license when I was 15 years old. And then for the ladies or the young girls, they had home economics, they had shop, which Teddy Perkins ran, and that's what you could do. Well, I wasn't much of a sportsman, no. Elementary was a good school, like I say. We went up to School Street, if you know where Appels is. Right beyond that on the left was the grammar school. And Laura Caudle was the 1st grade teacher. Edna Smith was there. She was a teacher and like that. But they were all good. I mean, it was a good school, wooden floors, and then it was a 2-story school and that. And they probably would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly the 5th grade.
Yeah, and then junior, you weren't much of a sportsman, but were you in any clubs or other activities there?
Not in school, no.
Did you do any outside activities that you liked?
Chase the girls. My wife and I got married in 1968. No, 66, 1960. Oh, she shoot me if it's wrong. But 1966, August 20th. And we had a daughter, Peggy Brown, Peggy Parker, and she went to school here. And then my wife went to work in the school system. And she worked for the town of Winterport until it merged with Hamden. And when it merged with Hamden, she worked the rest of her career at Hamden Academy, which was Reedbrook. That part is the part she worked in. And I was on a lot of them.
Were you?
Well, I was chairman of the Board of Selectmen. I was chairman of the Board of Assessors and that in town government. I was on the volunteer fire department, and myself and about 13 other people put together the first ambulance that the town of Winterport ever had. I grew up down on Water Street, so to get down there, you either got to go down Commercial or up Ferry. And Flora Maddox lived on Ferry Street, and she got hit up on Main Street, and she, of course, had to lay there quite a while. I was stocking shelves for the Pine Tree Market, Page's Market, right across the street from the Esso station. And I don't know, that always bothered me. I liked Flora. I used to mow her lawn and stuff like that. And so as I got older, there was a group of us, about 13 of us, the Libby boys and Bobby Thibodeau, Colin Olds Jr., and my father. we formed the ambulance service. Well, it goes on now. I mean, it's changed. The very first ambulance we had was an old Pontiac. We got it from the government, and I hauled it up out of a junkyard in Swanville to Winterport. We got it going, and of course, you've been up and down the main road some. So where that brand new building is, Edwards built, the gray one, there used to be the Winterport Town Hall, and right there was the fire department underneath of it. And that's where we fixed the ambulance up and stored it.
No.
My father was the fire chief here for years. My father was a person that he helped a lot of people in that. And he became very sick, come to live with Nancy and I. And when his time come to pass, he passed. I was going to have his funeral in Hamden at Gilpatrick's at the time. And he called me and he said he didn't think he could handle the funeral. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you guys know everybody. And he said, you know, I think it'll be too big, Roger. So I ended up having my father's funeral at the gymnasium at the Hamden Academy. He said, you know, here's a old-time shot of the fire chief, and showed him getting out of his pickup, and it was his last time. And they came from all around, down around Lewiston, Auburn, and Daddy was a person that just, if he couldn't say something good about somebody, he didn't say anything. And he liked helping people, you know. You might need some food or something like that. He liked giving a helping hand, and my parents was great to me to grow up with. Winterport well, in festivities, as I look at it, we had a bicentennial, and I looked for some of those wooden nickels that went with that, and I've got some somewhere, but I couldn't put my hands on them. I was going to bring them down, but bicentennial, and that was a big for this town. They had on Water Street there was a nice set of what I call Quonset huts, and there was a nice dock on it. It's where a marina is now. Guy W. Cap had put those buildings up. There was 4 or 5 of them, and we had a Navy boat come in. We had a lot of functions going on around town, parades and different suppers and things, but people got together. You know, my wife dressed up like in the olden days and stuff like that, and it was a family time for everybody. It was a real good tradition. Yeah. And then across from the school on School Street when I was a kid, and I don't think there'll be many people who remember this, but I want to say it was the Lions Club that sponsored it. We had a carnival there every year in the parking lot. Now, when I say a carnival, you know, they had rides and games and like that, and it was, you know, like a small fair. Yes. Of course, when I was a kid, Winterport was a real going place. I mean, we used to have big elm trees that crossed the main road, and then the elm tree disease come in, and those had to be taken down. And if I started at the foot of Hubbard Hill, Winterport, we had a drugstore right across the street. We had the Winterport Inn beside of it. We had a Gulf station beside of that. We had a Flying A station beside of that, and then we was on to the town hall, which Winterport had a beautiful town hall. It got old, but I mean, we had balconies in it that went around, and that had a nice stage, and we had a lot of different shows. Used to be minstrel shows in it, donkey basketball, you know, they come with their donkeys and ride them in there on the floor, and it was a lot of good times we had there. Harold Moon put a lot of minstrel shows on, as I call them. Well, the school system, I really, as I look back at it, would have liked to seen what I call Winterport, Frankfort, Monroe go together as a district. That doesn't mean there's anything the matter with District 22, but it was quite a different culture than what it was here in Winterport. I mean, when you went to Hamden, they had dress codes and different things, and it was just different. And it was a good school. So Winterport had a lot of businesses along Main Street, and we had a few businesses in the country out in West Winterport, But there was filling stations out there, little stores out there. Winterport was a great town. We had an airport.
Do you think like the main street now, obviously is it probably more built up now than back then, or would you say
No,
that
it's,
now it's
no, it's less.
the opposite?
It's the opposite.
Interesting.
Our main street was really pretty busy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember when my mother and father got their first automobile, and my father worked in Bangor, Maine, so he used to walk up Ferry Street every morning and catch the Flying Dutchman. It was a bus line that run between Belfast and Bangor, and that's how people went to Bangor and that. It offered a lot here in town. It offered a little bit of everything. And Winterport had, because as I got doing taxes and realized it as I started really looking at what I call land and that, Winterport had a number of dairy farms, and they had chicken farms, and they had apple orchards, and all of those employed people. So a lot of those businesses was in the country, but you could always find places to work. I mean, it was self-sufficient. A lot of them back years ago used to commute into what I call Pickering Square in Bangor, which was downtown. That had a lot of the businesses in it. It had Arthur Chapin's, it had Viners, and there was shoe shops, and Hamden had the shoe shop and stuff. So I mean, it was really a pretty good nature. And when I was a kid, I worked for Nathan Bean, who had the Esso station then. Learned to pump gas and stuff like that. Oh, for Nathan Bean, I worked there through school.
Yep.
That's how I was able to what I call keep my car going and everything, and chase things around. And I wished I had.
Enjoy it?
Oh yes, yeah. And I tell you, Nathan Bean taught me a lot in that. I learned an awful lot. I learned more outside than I did in school, probably. I left. I went to work for Bean and Conquest Truck Shop up at Bangor. And then one day these two people come in, and I got talking, and that's why I tell people I get paid to talk. And they said they'd like to hire a nice young man in the area for up to Bangor. And I asked them, doing what? And they said it was heavy equipment, forklifts. I said, what are them? I had no idea what they were. And they said, would you like to apply for the job? And I said, well, I don't know. I'd have to ask my wife, because I just had got married. Right. And we lived on an apartment, in an apartment here on Main Street in Winterport, if you can believe it or not, $10 a week. And that. And so they said, well, get a bus ticket and come on down to Lewiston and look us over. About a week later, they called back and said, did you get a bus ticket? I said, no. But I said, I'm coming down. My dad took a day off from work, went down with me, and we found the place, looked it over, and he wanted to know if I wanted him to come inside with me, and that's the way he was. He was always helpful. And I said, no, I got myself into this. I get myself out of it. And I went inside, and I never come out, and that was in 1968, May 20th. And I'm 77 years old, and I'm still working there. I'm their major accounts manager. I used to do all of the equipment that we sold and that was needed in the paper mills. There used to be 5 right on the Penobscot River, and there's not a one of them now. Because we had 2. You had Millinocket, East Millinocket, you had Lincoln, you had Brewer, you come down, you had Champion, you had Old Town, which was a Penobscot company. And to me, it's been a dream job. I mean, they've sent me halfway around the world, different places, and I've worked first in Chicago, Florida, New York, you know, had traveled to do it.
Yeah. Besides traveling for work, did you ever travel for pleasure?
We used to go to Florida, take Peg down to Disney World. But no, always made sure we took her on vacation. And then we used to go to Florida once a year.
But always came back to Winterport?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had many opportunities to move in the organization that I work for. And I just didn't care to leave. I mean, Winterport's been my home. I grew up here. I would tell them that Winterport is a very good community, and it's what you put into it is what you get back out of it. I think that the people, well, my father was nominated for the Jefferson Award too, which was a kind of a award in the state here. And I just think the people that wanted to remember him, they liked him. I mean, that's how I would look at that.
So
He was very honored. They named that for him just before he passed away. And he really was very honored. Lions, the Winterport Lions Club, I actually was what they call the King Lion, because that's what they called the president of it at the time. Joe Watson was also that, and he was the principal of our school here at the Smith School. And And the Lions Club used to do a lot of charity things. They would collect glasses, turn them into where your glasses, my glasses could maybe be reused for somebody else. You know, they'd put lenses in them and that. They used to sell light bulbs and raise money, and they were just a charitable organization. And we used to meet out to the old Grange Hall out on by the North Road and Ellenwood's White's Corner out there in West Winterport. And from that, I think they met for a while, because I haven't been in it for years, at Victoria Grant's building up here. And then there was a Grange Hall out on the back Winterport Road. They used to meet out there. When the Lions had the Grange Hall out back, we'd hold a few dances in it and some stuff like that. And, you know, just functions, and go and have suppers. And we used to hold suppers and always drew a good group down to the Smith School in that, because it had its own kitchen, had a pretty big gym. Lena Weed had donated some money to build that gym onto the school. My father was a Mason, and he really, I only have ever been in that Mason Hall once, all the years I've lived here. When my father died, he wanted to talk to me before he died. He had a couple notes. One of them was with the Masons, and one of them was with a student, and which was my daughter. And he just said to me, "Look, Roger," he said, "I love that Mason Hall and that." He said, "You're all set. You don't need," you know, he wanted me to forgive the notes, and that's what I did. And from that, the Masons invited Nancy and I to go down there. One night they was having a supper function. And like I say, I had never been in that hall. But he had financed the new furnace they needed for them. And they paid him, was paying him like they should. And he wanted for me to forgive the note, and I did. And my daughter was the same way. He had financed a note for her, and he showed me. She had it all wrote up. She paid interest every month and like that, and he said, "I'd like to have you forgive that," and I did, because that's what he wanted. A lot of people probably wouldn't even remember that, but it was a big function.
So you had entertainers come from away, or?
Oh, we had Hal Lone Pine used to come here and play, and his wife was Betty Cody, and we had Curly O'Brien. These was all local talents that were around, and Shoddy Thomas and like that in shows. And we never had Dick Curlis play down here, but I mean, you know, he was the biggest around this area. So there's a lot of good things that people can do that come to Maine and the communities around them. I was around for it.
Okay.
and that. Not to see the ferry run, but I used to play in the ferry house because we lived right across the street, the big house that we lived in. I was going to actually bring the painting off the wall, but I didn't of it. And but it's the biggest house on that street. Looked like an inn. It was a 3-story house. And the ferry terminal used to be right across the street from it. Use that winch to haul the ferry a lot of times across the river. And that, you know, might be coming. That river's got a tremendous current to it. I wanted to say tide, but it's a current, and it's a swift current. I did bring a book of tickets that I have that one of my people that I do business with saw them at an antique place and picked them up and called me up and said, I got something for you, and it's about the Winterport Ferry. How much are the tickets? And these are special excursion. It says, I don't see a price on them. See if you see one. But like I say, one of my customers just bought them, called me up and said, hey, I got something for you. You know anything about this ferry house? I said, I grew up right across the street from it. No, I got in troubles out on the river. I got into a little boat one day, and the Nevilles lived right beside of me, and my mother missed me. She, where is he? And Bobby Neville's come out and managed to get me before I got to Bucksport. I got in that little skiff and cut her loose, and out she was going. And that current is wicked in that river. And that's one way that I learned it. I mean, you get in it, you're gonna go down it fast a long ways. Yeah, there was a lot of boat stuff along there, Ed, and there was. And of course that wharf that Guy W. Cap put in was during the wartime. And that place used to be a brickyard, Bert Chandler's brickyard, and Bert Chandler was a well driller here in town. We had a tremendous amount of business in that. I remember the wharf the Bakers had down here. Yeah. In that.
And they were fishing smelts?
Yes, smelts. Well, the Johnsons, old Ernest Johnson's family fished this river a lot for smelts in that. And Sidney Johnson did. Sidney worked for the state and plowed for them in that. And every year they fished them. And Millie Perkins had a nice fish market right in Ball Hill Cove up there, just before you get to the Hamden line on the left. View Pavilion was built later. Prior to it was the Red Barn in Monroe. Like? Oh, they were great. Now those places had good entertainers out there. My wife and I went to many dances every Saturday night. Randy's father, of course, came from Winterport here and had an oil business. And we all grew up together. We raised our families together. We're best friends to this day. And we used to always go to the dances every Saturday night. The girls Saturday would go to the hairdresser, who was Jeannie Worcester's sister, Barbara Schenkel. Yeah, I stopped, think a minute. These names change. And Barbara Schenkel, and she was on Main Street there in Winterport, and they went up there every Saturday to get their hair done. Winterport Inn, there again, the Winterport Inn was a good place to go eat. The Shaws ran that, and then there was another family after them that ran it, and they had entertainment there. They had Del Spencer and the Shadowcasters every Saturday night. That was good entertainment, and it was good music, and it was a lot of fun. You could go up there and have a few drinks and dance or whatever, and probably lucky if you didn't get hit in the head with something. Right. I remember one night, Norman Sandman was his name, his real name. They called him Junior Sandman. He leaned a guitar up against my car, and Nance and I got in the car and took off, and there went the guitar, and Norman said, oh no, it was a borrowed one, Roger. Cobbler Cole. Where? Right up where Franny Bass used to have his garage on Main Street. Yep. That was Oral Cole was the son, and Hattie was his mother, and I'm trying to think of what his father's name was. But
these
yes,
leather shoes that people would fix.
that is
throwing them out,
that is correct. Yeah, cobbler
rubber
coal.
ones we got now.
Yeah, and up where our Pell is, used to be Mildred Doughton and her sister, and they had a laundry in a rooming house there. But I was all over the neighborhood. We had a good neighborhood. We had a lot of good people in that. And that's the best part. There were some Wadleys that lived on Commercial Street, though. Now, that could have been Ruth Wadley's father-in-law, or Forrest was her husband in that. And but the Wadley family that I remember was Marjorie and Forrest Wadley, and Mary was the oldest daughter, and she ended up working for Nancy and I for quite a while, keeping house and that. Then there was a boy older than me, Bobby, and there was a younger girl, Karen. And in the neighborhood, one thing I liked about Winterport, in the neighborhood, I could tell you when the fella got the first colored TV, everybody launched to his house to watch that colored TV, was Charlie Green and Ruth Green, because I did a lot of work around the hatcheries and that, with machinery and that. Yeah, so,
Thank you.
well, you're very welcome.